welcome back to my channel. Today I have another dump and go crock pot video for you, but these are all going to be healthy dump and go recipes. So if you are looking to be on a little bit of a healthier diet this year, or if you just want a healthier recipe, I hope these recipes will help you out. I do find that a lot of the crock pot dump and go recipes can be a little bit unhealthy, so I wanted to find some healthy ones to share with you guys. If this is your first time stopping by my channel, I would love to have you. I share a lot of really quick and easy recipes on my channel, lots of crock pot dinners, meal prep, and other food related content. So if that is something that you're interested in, make sure you're subscribed, and let's go ahead and get into all of these healthy dump and go recipes. For this first crock pot dinner, I'm making some crock pot Italian meatballs. These turned out so good. They had a lot of flavor. So I'm starting off with 1 pound of lean ground beef, and I'm just cracking in 1 egg to help bind everything together. Now the recipe called for mozzarella cheese, but I added in about a 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan, as well as a 1/4 cup of the shredded Parmesan cheese, but I will link the original recipe below. And then I'm adding in a little bit of garlic powder, probably about a teaspoon of dried parsley, a teaspoon of dried basil, and then you're going to want about 1/2 teaspoon of some dried oregano, 1/4 teaspoon of thyme, as well as a 1/4 teaspoon of some dried rosemary. And then I am adding a little bit of salt and pepper to taste. I don't have exact measurements there, just do that to taste. And then you're going to mix everything together with your hands. I am not a fan of using my hands to mix meat together, but I have found that it's the best way to get everything really well incorporated and blended together, so that's what I always do. And then into a separate bowl, I'm going to be mixing up my marinara sauce. Of course, you could just use a jar here if you want, but this marinara sauce did turn out pretty good. So this is 1 large can of crushed tomatoes with about 1.5 tablespoons of tomato paste, and then I have about 1/2 of a yellow onion that I really finely diced up. I'm also adding in lots of garlic, a little bit of salt and pepper. I do add some more seasonings in a little bit later on at the end of this recipe, but I'm just giving this a quick whisk together. Now I'm ready to make my meatballs, so I'm just spraying my crock pot with a little bit of olive oil so nothing sticks. Of course, you could also use a liner if you would like to do it that way. And then I'm just taking my cookie dough scooper, and this always helps make the best meatballs. I just use my little scooper, scoop them up, and then I will roll them out with my hands, and straight into the crock pot they go. I just ordered my cookie dough scooper off of Amazon, but I highly recommend getting one if you have not gotten one already. They work really well, and I find myself using it all the time. Now I'm just topping those meatballs with the marinara sauce that I made, and mine cooked on high for about 3.5 hours, and they came out perfectly juicy. They were delicious. I tasted the marinara sauce and I definitely felt like it needed some extra seasoning as well as some sweetness, so I added in a little bit of sugar, some garlic powder, salt and pepper. Just add all of that to taste, give it a stir together, and give it a taste again and see what you think. The recipe did not call for any of those seasonings, but I definitely felt like it needed a little bit something because it was a little bit acidic without the sugar in there. It added just a touch of sweetness, but we absolutely loved these crock pot meatballs. I thought they turned out really good, and they were very easy to throw together as well. For this next dinner, I'm making some honey garlic chicken. This one turned out so good, and it had a ton of flavor. It was a very flavorful chicken, so I think you guys will really enjoy this one. I'm gonna start off by mixing up the sauce that's gonna go on top of the chicken. So this is 1/3 cup of soy sauce. I use the Kikkoman brand one, and then I'm also adding in about 1/3 cup of honey right here. I'm also adding in 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. I'm just eyeballing it here as I always do in my cooking. Here is 2 teaspoons of sriracha. You could also use some other type of chili paste or hot sauce, but I chose to use sriracha for ours. And then the recipe called for about 4 cloves of minced garlic. I just did a big heaping tablespoon of minced garlic, and then I'm also adding in about 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and just giving all of this a good mix together. The recipe did not call for any chicken broth, but I did decide to add in about half of a cup, and I definitely would recommend it. I feel like it added a lot of good moisture and it helped keep the chicken nice and juicy. But now I'm going to get everything added into my crock pot. So again, I'm just spraying that with a little bit of cooking spray, and then I'm adding in my 2 chicken breasts. Mine were frozen, but you could use fresh or frozen here. And then I'm just topping it with all of that sauce, and I let this cook on high for about 4 hours. Once my chicken had fully cooked through, I'm just removing that into a separate bowl, and I'm going to be shredding this up with my hand mixer. I've shared this tip a million times on my channel, but it's one of my favorites. If you like a really finely shredded chicken, I definitely recommend using the hand mixer. It works perfect for this recipe. Now over into a separate bowl, I'm going to be making a little cornstarch slurry. So this is 2 tablespoons of cornstarch with 2 tablespoons of cold water. I'm just giving this a good mix together. I find that when I make a cornstarch slurry, instead of just adding the cornstarch right into the liquid, it always combines a little bit better that way. So now here I'm just gonna add that into the liquid in my crock pot and give it a good mix together. This cornstarch slurry is just going to help thicken up all of the liquid. I am also going to be adding my chicken back into here, and then I'm going to let this cook for like another 10 to 20 minutes just until that liquid is starting to thicken up. I will say I don't even know if it would need the cornstarch, because once you add the chicken back in, I feel like it was fairly thick, but regardless, I did go ahead and add it, and this recipe came out absolutely delicious. I let mine thicken up for about 15 minutes, and then I just served this over some brown rice with some green onions sliced on top, broccoli on the side, and this was such a good dinner. I think you guys would really enjoy this one. This next dinner has to be one of my all-time favorites. We are going to be making some vegetable beef soup. This always turns out so good. My whole family loves it. So here I'm adding in 1 pound of lean ground beef that I already cooked up in my skillet. And then I'm adding in 1 large yellow onion that's very finely diced. And this is about 2 cups of yellow potatoes. They did take the skins off and then just dice those up. And then I'm adding in a big bag of mixed frozen vegetables, along with 1 can of petite diced tomatoes. And then to make it a little bit more creamy, we're going to be adding in 1 can of condensed tomato soup right into the crock pot. For seasonings in this recipe, I'm adding in 1 teaspoon of regular table salt, 1 teaspoon of some dried parsley, and then about half a teaspoon of some dried basil. I am adding a little bit of pepper to taste here. Of course, you could add a little bit more salt as well if you want. A big scoop of minced garlic, probably about a tablespoon, and then a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. And then for the broth, I'm adding in about 4 cups of beef broth. I just used some beef bouillon and made my own at home. And then I'm just gonna give all of this a good mix together. I cooked this vegetable beef soup in my crock pot on high for about 4 hours. I will have the original recipe linked down below. It was actually a stovetop recipe to begin with, and I just altered to put it in the crock pot, and it turned out so good. If you guys like vegetable beef soup, you're going to love this one. It's definitely a family favorite that my kids just gobble right up. For this next dinner, I'm making some burrito bowls. Now, I was really skeptical about this recipe. I wasn't sure how it would actually turn out in the crock pot, just because sometimes rice in the slow cooker doesn't turn out very good, but I was pleasantly surprised this turned out so good. I think you guys will really enjoy it. But I'm starting off with adding 2 frozen chicken breasts right into my slow cooker. I'm also adding in 1 can of petite diced tomatoes. For seasonings, I did 2 teaspoons of chili powder, about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. The recipe did call for 2 teaspoons, but I felt like that was a lot, so I did a little bit less. And then I'm also adding in 1 teaspoon of some ground cumin, a little bit of pepper to taste, and then I'm adding in 1 cup of chicken broth. Now I cooked this on high for about 3 hours before adding in the rest of my ingredients. I did give this a quick mix together before cooking it, but otherwise just pop it into your slow cooker and cook it for a couple of hours. After my chicken had cooked for about 3 hours, I'm adding in 1 can of drained and rinsed black beans, 1 cup of frozen corn, as well as 1 cup of uncooked brown rice. I'm just going to add all of that right into my crock pot. And then the recipe said you're going to want to add a little bit of water, but it basically said to add as you need it. So I would recommend to start with about half a cup of broth or water. I just chose to add water here and it turned out totally fine. So I add in about half a cup of broth, and then you can add in about a quarter cup of liquid after that. And then you're just gonna cook this on high for a couple of hours or on low for about 3 to 4. I chose to cook mine on high for about 2 hours and it turned out really good. I think I added in about 3/4 cup water total. Now I'm ready to serve up my burrito bowls. So I didn't have a ton on hand on this night, but I just served ours with some lettuce as well as some cheese on top, of course. But this would be so good with some avocado, salsa, sour cream. Whatever you have in your house would be so good on these burrito bowls. Our family really enjoyed them and they were very easy to throw together as well. For this next dinner, I'm making some Crockpot ZUPPA TOSCANA. So we're gonna be starting off with cooking up our bacon. So I want to cook up 6 pieces of bacon in my skillet here. I'm just gonna cook those up like you would any normal slice of bacon. And then over to my cutting board, I'm gonna be chopping up everything that I need for this soup. So this is 1 small white onion. I'm just dicing that up into some fine pieces. We're actually gonna be adding this right into the bacon grease. So pop that into a bowl. And then for the sausage here, I'm just using a kielbasa sausage just because I already had it on hand and I wanted to get it used up. But otherwise the recipe actually called for a chicken sausage, and I think that would be really good in this recipe. Now that my bacon is completely cooked through, I'm going to be removing that from my skillet and just letting it drain off onto a paper towel. And then I'm going to be taking out the majority of the bacon grease from the pan. You don't want it to be super greasy. I probably left in about a tablespoon of the bacon grease in there. And then I'm adding in my onion as well as my sausage. I let mine cook up for probably about 5 minutes, just until everything was starting to turn a little bit brown. The onions were nice and translucent in color, but let this cook for about 5 minutes or so, and then you're going to want to add in a big scoop of minced garlic. Let it cook for another 30 seconds to a minute, and then you're going to be ready to add this into your crock pot. Here is that sausage and onion mixture going right into my crock pot. You'll notice that I didn't spray my crock pot this time. I just felt like I really didn't need it because this was such a liquidy soup. I knew it wouldn't get too stuck on. So I just added that in there, and then I'm also adding in 4 medium yellow potatoes that were all diced up into bite-sized pieces. For the seasoning, I added in 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, a couple good shakes of some crushed red pepper flakes, salt and pepper to taste, and then I'm also going to be adding in about 4 cups of some chicken broth. Just get that added right in there, and then you're going to cook this on high for about 4 hours or until your potatoes are cooked through. Now after the potatoes were nice and soft, I just got my kale and I added that right into the crock pot. This is about 4 cups of kale, and then I'm also adding in 2 cans of coconut milk. I've never added coconut milk in a recipe before and I was a little unsure, but I actually did like the flavor of it. It was a little bit different, but it turned out pretty decent. I think the only thing that I would definitely change here is I felt like the kale was a lot. So I would add in about 2 cups of kale, and I would definitely finely dice it up instead of how I did it here. After my kale had wilted, I'm adding in my 6 pieces of bacon. I just crumbled those up and then they're going right into the soup. Now, like I said, the soup turned out pretty good. The coconut milk had a little bit different flavor. It was almost like a sweeter soup. If you are into that, I think you would really enjoy the soup recipe, but I definitely would recommend cutting a little bit of the kale out. It just was really overpowering for me. I did add a little bit of salt and pepper to taste, but overall, I thought this soup was pretty good for a healthier alternative to the regular ZUPPA TOSCANA. Definitely give it a try if you like a sweeter soup. Well, that is going to wrap up this dump and go video. I really hope that you all enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already. I would love to have you over on my channel for more crockpot videos, meal prep, and other food related content. So definitely make sure you're subscribed, and I will catch you all in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
As a young girl, the fields were mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines. So offshore, playful and free, without a care.